All right, so these are both dry now. I still have two of those key bars, the metal bars soaking. Everything else, all the other key bars have been lubricated. All the keys are here. I got a box from Centaur with replacement keys for the broken ones, and one from CAE Sounds with bell cranks and other things that are missing. And now I'm just doing a test with some bluing on this bar to make it more rust proof in the future, and it looks like it's working quite well, so I'm going to continue to put that on. I'm actually going to move the camera here so you can see me do it in real time. It's a pretty neat process. So here we find some shiny metal, and as I put it on, it just blackens it up and builds an oxidized coating on there that prevents rust from happening in the future. So really trying to make sure that this thing is well resurrected, and it's going to be around for many more years to come. So I'll put on a few coats of that, but let me just put on the first one here, and we'll let it start to dry. And then we'll come back and do a second coat. And then after the second coat, we'll do a third coat, and this should be all set for many more years of use. We'll put some lubrication on there, some silicone grease, actual grease, not that silicone WD lubrication that I have, but some grease. I think that'll help this last a little bit longer, and just stay a little bit safer. So there we go. Just the last little bit here. Perfect. All right. Now we'll let this dry. Back over here. I want to test the same finish on this base, which I suspected was actually what was on here. So I'm putting a really heavy coating of bluing on this. I might have to clean more of the rust off. I'm just hoping I don't, because that just makes this harder and harder and harder. Let's see here. It looks like it's sort of working. I can't really tell. It's definitely darkening it. I just can't tell if it's gonna stay on there. I'm actually gonna switch to a paintbrush, and let's see, I'll move this bluing bottle over here, and we will just paint this on and see how it does. The directions say to fully clean the metal, so this might just not be clean enough for the treatment. If I have to clean it more, I'm gonna have to get it back to bare metal, in which case it's gonna require quite a bit of sanding. I might also try wiping it down with acetone, because that will actually help clean off any grease, which prevents this from working, or denatured alcohol. Actually, that might be a better move. Let's see how that goes. Let's see. So this part is the first part I rubbed. Let's see. Now, yeah, it looks like a lot of this is coming off on me, so I'm not so sure how successfully we're bluing this, and you can actually see some of the rust still. So I might need to better clean this. I'm gonna try it over here where there's a little less rust. There's no rust here. All right, so that's not working. So what I'm gonna do next is come back with some denatured alcohol and clean a little spot off with some Q-tips. And if that works. This is 99% isopropyl alcohol, so it's very strong. And let's just clean this area right here. Really get in there and just see if I can remove any sort of oils and greases and that kitchen cleaner that we use to clean this off. I'm just gonna try to get it as clean as possible. A lot of that bluing is actually coming off here onto this. So now we'll just sit for a second, let it dry. Luckily, 99% isopropyl alcohol dries really fast. And it looks like it's already dry. Let's see if that's the case. Yep. So that is now hopefully grease-free. And now what I'll do is just do a little test dot with some of this bluing and see if it actually starts to blacken this up. Maybe put a little bit more on. Let's see how that does. I'm just gonna wipe off the excess. And this test spot that we did right here actually looks pretty good. It's definitely blued it. So that's an option. When I look here, it looks like the finish actually might be some sort of paint. And when I look down here, it looks even more like a paint. There's certainly a sheen to it. Maybe a satin black paint. And it looks like this here is painted or stamped in silver paint. So maybe I just need to repaint this. Let's let it dry a little bit more. I mean, where it was blackened, it blackened, but I don't think it'll get too much darker than that. Let's see, this is the test area with the bluing. This is not over here, or sorry, with the denatured alcohol, and this is not over here. So let me see if that changes anything. We'll let this dry for a second, and then we can come back and test. But now we're actually ready for our second coat here. So with that, I'm gonna grab a fresh Q-tip, dunk it, and just start to slowly roll this and rub this on. We'll just get, like I said, 3 coats on here, and then it should be nice and ready for many years of protected use. There's that. All right, that's going really well. Keep going here. Great, and I'm just gonna rotate it around to do the other end here. Great, now I'll just leave this here and let it dry for another few minutes. It looks like I rubbed this spot off on accident when I was holding it. There we go. We'll just let that dry, and then we'll come back and do one last coat and then put a little grease on it. The spot that we've blued over here is starting to look quite a bit darker and starting to match the final coat a little bit more. I'm gonna let it fully dry before we do anything on there. The directions say allow to work 30 seconds, rinse with cold water, and wipe dry. Polish lightly with steel wool, repeat 4, 5, 6, and 7 to obtain a darker blue. Saturate metal with some rust preventer. So, looks like I'm not doing that here, but I think it's okay. This is working pretty well. Here, it's dried for more than 30 seconds and it just seems to somewhat be working. And actually, some of these spots with rust are actually darkening, so I think this is working actually. I'm gonna go ahead and lightly paint this on over the whole thing. We'll let it dry for, instead of 30 seconds, maybe a minute. And then we'll rub it with some steel wool, rinse it off, and then continue to do this until it looks dark. And then we can start to rebuild the keyboard. I'll go back over to the sink and then I'll rinse both these off since I wasn't 100% following the directions. And then we will come back here and continue. And if you can see, this side has really darkened up quite a bit. So it looks like this is working. It's just going to take quite a few coats and a lot of steel wool in between. But I think this is darkening up well. All right, now I'll go over to the sink and clean these off. All right, so now we're at the sink. I'm just gonna rinse this off like it says to do. Put some wire wool, rub it. I'll do the same thing on the other side. This still is nice and black. Let's do the same to this case. And as you can see, there's still some black on there, not a ton. Now I'm beginning to wonder if this truly is blued or if it's painted. I can't seem to replicate the finish. The only reason I think it's not painted is I can't get anything to peel off. It's all very stuck on there. So I think what I might actually do is let this dry and then we'll see how it looks. If it's still not looking good, I might have to sand it down or put it in some rust converter. So we will see. I just don't want to put it in rust converter because I want to save this. So we'll let it dry and see how the bluing looks here, how it matches to the back, and if it doesn't, then we'll reassess. Otherwise, I'm gonna take this this bar that just fell. Hold on. This bar, we'll put another coat of bluing on there and just keep going. So when we check back in, this will be finished, and then we'll assess how this looks. And this is just gonna be refinished the same way. I'm gonna put more bluing on, let it dry, use the finishing pad, more bluing, let it dry, finishing pad until it looks nice and dark and protected. Thanks. Just wanted to point out here, you're supposed to wear gloves when using bluing. I did not. Freaked me out a little bit. I think I'll be okay from what I read, but I just wanted to let everybody know. A second ago, you saw me not wearing gloves. Should not be doing that. The directions didn't say to wear gloves, and I didn't know what that symbol meant, but I definitely do now. Luckily, it's cold bluing, so apparently the acid, if you don't get too much in your body, will be processed by your kidneys. Definitely want to wear gloves going forward. Did not know that that was a possibility. But you'll see here that the bar is now finished. I put 4 coats on. It's very protected now. So you know, everything looks nice and black. A lot of these parts do not though. So what I was gonna do is put just a little bit of rust cleaner in this bowl. And there we go, that's all it'll need. Then we have all the hardware sitting in there and soaking. It will clean, and then I will, with gloves, put some more bluing on. We got all of our bell cranks now cleaned. There's still a little rust on them here and there, but it's as clean as it's gonna get. I'm mostly focused on cleaning the tips here and on the base to make sure that everything runs as smoothly as possible. So that's there. The base for the keyboard is still drying. And we'll let it dry just a little bit longer. It's looking like the bluing probably isn't gonna work, so we'll have to repaint that. Okay, so these have soaked overnight. While that was happening, I actually bought all new hardware for the key bed. Well, not all new, but new hardware. So it was missing the screws that actually hold this onto the metal base, which I'm not 100% sure the size, but I think it's a 1024 half-inch screw. There's 16 of those, and then I got nylon self-locking washers to hold them on. And then also on these brackets, there were two different screws. One was this kind of hex head screw, and then there was another one that was a Phillips head screw that I have right here. I took it with me to the hardware store, so I could find a similar one. But on the other bracket, we have this Phillips head screw. All of them looked kind of gross, so I went ahead and bought some replacements, which ended up being number 8 half-inch sheet metal screws. Again, I got all these in stainless steel so that they don't rust. In the meantime, I got my gloves here. Like I said, definitely don't want to handle bluing anymore without them after learning about what it can do to you. So I'm just putting on my glove here and my other glove, and what we're gonna do is take out the remaining screws that hold this bar right here on to the base, and then we're just gonna put some bluing on the screws and the little clips and prepare them for putting back together. So I'll move these off to the side here. I actually had one test clip that I did this morning before I recorded this, just to show you what it looks like. You know, I put bluing, let me see if you can see it a little bit better. I put bluing all on it. It's nice and protected now, and shouldn't have any rust issues going forward. So I have a little bit of paper towels here. I'm gonna take everything out and just dry it off. It looks like the rust has all just been completely removed, which is great. And I'm not gonna have to do too much scrubbing. So let me just put all these there. Fantastic. And I'm actually gonna put this off to the side because I keep reusing it, which is great. All right, and then we'll just start to dry this off with some dry paper towels, a little nest I made here. All right, so these are now dry. Let me just, I'll put these off to the side. Now we have everything. I'm gonna take this screw out since I've got replacements. What I found on both of these, which is really interesting, the tip here is actually called a self-tapping screw. So I don't know if that meant that the key bed base didn't have threads on it. They screwed this in to thread it or what, or this bracket didn't. But when I bought a replacement, it didn't have this self-tapping or self-drilling tip, but it fits just fine. And I'll put a little Loctite on these when I reinstall it just to make sure it's nice and safe. So I'll set that off to the side. These brackets appear to be fine. There's like a little, you know, staining here and there, which you can probably see. But for the most part, they're fine. I'll just put some silicone lubricant on here, a few coats, just to preserve them and prevent rust. So I'm gonna take these and put them back in the key bed stands bag. And I will actually take these screws, even though I will be replacing them, just to preserve them, and back in here. So we'll set that off to the side now. And now I will start to treat these so that they can all be reinstalled. All right, so I'll get a bit of bluing. Again, wear gloves, don't not do it. I'm an idiot for not doing that. Didn't know any better, but not any good. All right, so I'm just putting some of this on. You can already see it's getting nice and black. Oh, there we go. Flipping it over. Just making sure to get this channel, the sides, the edges. And then in a second here, oh, I got caught on my glove. In a second here, we'll wipe it all off with a paper towel instead of a finishing pad. Since these are so fiddly and small, I'm not gonna bother using wire wool. I think it would just be too hard. I'm actually gonna go back on these screws as well and just glue everything so that going forward, there's absolutely no chance for rust. All right. Set that over here. Let's make a little pile of things that we've blued. We'll do the same on all these. And then once this is done, we'll just let it dry, do it again, or wipe it off, do it again, let it dry, and we'll go and put 3 coats on these as well. Update on the keyboard base, I'm calling it, that big metal base that I was testing finishes on. I'll show you here in a second once this is finished, but it's pretty clear that bluing does not work on it in any capacity. So I went ahead and did some paint tests. It looks like it's a satin paint. So I tried a gloss, and the glossy paint looks absolutely terrible. So I'm not going to be doing that. And then I tried a satin paint. The satin paint looks a little better, honestly. But the problem is that it gets a little spotty without a primer coat. So then I did another test with a primer. We'll look at all 3. I didn't do any sanding in between, and you can just assume that with sanding, everything will actually be even better looking, which will be nice. I think we'll end up going with a satin primer and then a satin, oh, there's this screw that holds the clear poly foot that I took off the base. It appears to just be unfinished steel because it's bluing really well right now. So that's great. Should prevent rust going forward on it. Make sure I get in there. It's interesting. I was, thinking that everything would be Phillips or everything would be flathead. But what I found is there's a decent mix of both, which I find to be really odd. Wouldn't have thought that that would be the case, but maybe there's a reason why. Maybe it was just a cheaper screw at the time. Who knows? All right, so just finishing this up. Oh, sorry, but yeah, we'll be doing the primer, and I'll just pull that out here and show you. I think with some sanding in between, I can get it looking quite nice. I am going to try to preserve the numbering on the bottom, so I think I'll paint the top, and then on the bottom, I'm going to try to just blend the paint in. So paint the areas where there's rust now. Make sure that I leave the serial number and everything and then blend it in. And then I got a satin top coat that I'm gonna put on just so that on the bottom, if there is any rust showing, everything going forward will be rust free, and I'm not gonna have any more issues with that. So there we go. Just got a few more of these. I'm gonna switch to the last little bit of my Q-tip. Really wished I had known about the glove thing, but you live, you learn, and just the way it goes. So, and then after I put this coat on, these I'm gonna put a little, I was debating putting a little silicone on there, but I don't think I really need to, I guess, because these are all blued. And I think, like I said yesterday, I don't want to put it on that bar because there's felt in the bell cranks, and I don't want the bell cranks to be have less or more friction than they're supposed to. So I think I might just leave everything as is, just with the bluing on there, and not worry about any other protective coatings, because bluing itself is pretty rust preventative. So there's that. But if I did do anything, I just put a little silicone spray, that same bottle that I've been showing you guys, on there. Just a couple of coats. All right. You got my dog off in the background. She's a one-year-old poodle, so very noisy. All right, there's that. And just 2 more screws here. Cool. So now that's done. I'm actually gonna dry everything off, make sure my gloves look good. I think they're fine. Great. Dry everything off. And now I'm just gonna dry these screws off. There we go. Just word to the wise on all of this stuff. Be sure to always dry everything off when you take it out of the rust converter right away. Otherwise, as it dries, it has a bad habit of rusting again, which is no good. All right, so there they are again. Just make sure that there's nothing else caught in the paper towels. All right, now we'll just go back through. I'm gonna get some more Q-tips, and we'll put a second coat on, and then I'll finally put a third coat. Another idea I had that I've seen other people do is actually pour some of this into the cap. I don't know, it's a little corrosive though. Now that I've learned more about it, I'm a little scared to do that. So I'll just keep doing it manually. There we go. Cool. And I do try to save hardware if it looks original, which is why I'm going through all the trouble of bluing these. It just seems to me like it's made it so long, why not keep helping it, or why not keep helping it go, you know? All right. All right, so now we're all finished up. I'll let that dry for 1 second. We'll dry all these off. I'm just gonna dry them off individually now. And then I'm gonna put them into our bell crank screws and brackets bag. All right. Put these aside. Now we're done with this bluing. I'll put it away, throw these away, and then I'm gonna come right back with the keyboard base, and we'll talk about finishes, and then we'll move on to next steps. Okay, so you can see here I tested a whole bunch of finishes. This is actually the bluing, which I don't know if you can tell, but didn't really do anything. And then over here I tried a self-priming gloss enamel spray paint. You can see all of the orange peel. It looks absolutely terrible. I don't think that the bluing has worked at all. Now if we go a little further down, this is still drying. You can see the streaks in it, but you can actually see the final gloss over here. That is a satin black. And then if you look here, it's a little smoother. It's hard to tell, and there's a lot of imperfections still. But I think the color, or the shine is correct here to match some of these. Smoothness obviously isn't there. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna paint strip all of this now that I've done all these tests. And then I'm going to use some 99% denatured alcohol, really strong alcohol, clean everything off so there's no oil or any residues on here. And then I'm gonna prime all of this, then I'm gonna sand it, and then I'm gonna put on, I'm gonna wet sand it. Then I'm gonna put on one coat of the satin black, and then we'll assess what to do from there. If it looks good, I might put on a second coat just to make it a little more durable. And then I have a satin clear coat that'll spray over everything. And what I was thinking is a color or spray all of this so everything has the new finish on it, on top, on this little leg, on the back here, behind, just to try and get everything as protected as possible. Now on the bottom, you know, this isn't the best, but it's not the worst. There's no rust on here, there's just some fading. There is a bit of rust here, and there was a whole bunch here and here that I had to clean off with a wire brush. But I really want to preserve this. So what I'm thinking is on the back, where there's rust, like here, where there's paint missing, like here and here, I'll put some primer, and then I will use the satin black, and hopefully I can kind of fade it in to these areas that are more okay, so it's less noticeable. And then I'll put a satin clear coat over everything, top and bottom, just to add a layer of protection for everything. So that's the plan. Given these tests that I did, I just think that the high gloss self-priming paint looks awful. Bluing hasn't done anything. And then just the color here, to me, looks good even though it's not fully dry. And the smoothness here, the primer is definitely helping. So next up, we will use some Citri Strip to clean this off. And then I will use some alcohol, and then we'll go outside to start to paint. All right, thanks. All right, so I'm back now with some paint stripper and a paintbrush, and I'm just gonna get some of this on and then just move it around a little bit.
There we go.
All right, so that says after 30 minutes up to 24 hours we scrape. So I'm just gonna leave this here and then we will check back. I'm probably gonna leave it on for a few hours just to make sure that everything comes off. And then when we get back, we'll be able to go forward from there. All right, thank you. All right, so it's been a while. I think this is ready. I'm gonna, got my gloves on, I got some paper towels. I'm just gonna start wiping off. And it looks like all of the paint just comes right off. Look at all that. So that's great. We're getting it off the back as well. Seems like there's no real spots where it's being stubborn, so that's great. It also reaffirms that the finish that was originally on here was paint as well. So that's great. I like using paper towels. I'm always worried about getting this stuff into my pipes or out in the grass or whatever. It's citry strip, so it's a little bit more natural, but still, I don't want this stuff getting anywhere else. And I actually put the foil down so that it didn't eat through the cardboard or anything else. Paint stripper is caustic. All right. So this has done a really great job of stripping all the paint off. I think I've gotten all the paint thinner, the paint stripper off. So what I'm gonna do now is take this outside and wash it with some simple green. All right, so you can see how all the paint was stripped off on this. This is just rust from the years. Sort of stripped it off. There's still some rust here. So I'm gonna try to clean this up and prep it the best I can for paint. But first off, I didn't want to put anything on here while we were doing this because the paint stripper would just saturate it if it got on there, and then a little bit of paint came off right there. What I'm gonna do is use some painter's tape and just make a little cover for this as neatly as I can. Let's see, it's about that long. And now if I place this on there, I'll cut it down a little bit. I need to just square up an edge. Okay, so now I think I can place even thinner. I can place this there. And I'll press that on. Now, that'll ensure that as I paint everything, this little spot's preserved. I'm actually gonna try to fade here as much as I can, so you might have a little scratching here, and then I'm gonna put top coat on, but I'd like to preserve this just for posterity so it looks as nice as possible. So next steps are just to wipe all of this down with some isopropyl alcohol to make sure that there's no residue or anything left. And then once I wipe this down, we'll be ready for paint.